So because I lost my voice for 8 years because of a reflux type issue, and we make a lot of videos about acid reflux on our consumer channel, I've been getting a lot of questions about silent reflux or laryngopharyngeal reflux, or LPR like all the cool kids call it. That's what we'll call it. We'll call it LPR. And I just wanted to make a video if you're working as a health, fitness, or a wellness professional. So if your clients are dealing with this LPR issue, I wanted to kind of break down what we're looking at and help you understand the right ways to approach it with your clients. Because with a lot of our other videos, people will watch it and they'll be like, oh, well, this is great, but I have LPR. So that's not going to work for me. Mine's a lot more fancy than what you're talking about. But the scenario when we're looking at this LPR is that the situation that is creating it is just like most other acid reflux issues. It's just the way that the person is experiencing those symptoms that can be different. So in this video, I want to help you understand the differences between acid reflux or your clients dealing with this LPR issue and steps you can take to help them improve it. Let's jump in.
TC Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
So remember, I'm not a doctor and I'm not giving any medical advice for you to give to your clients. I just kind of want to share some studies, and I'll put links to those studies in the description below this video so you can dig into those a little bit deeper and share those with your clients when you need to. That just kind of help us understand what we're looking at here and understand why there's so much confusion about this LPR issue. I went through 23 different doctors that were not able to help me improve this, and I had to find my own answers. So I just kind of want to share some of that information here with you guys today. So the most common thing that we're going to look at when we're looking at symptoms that a client might be dealing with are things like hoarseness, or maybe they're losing their voice, or just laryngitis type issues, and this is just because this acid is coming back up and damaging those delicate tissues there in the larynx. Another thing could be a chronic cough, and this happens a lot where somebody's coughing a lot and they don't understand it. I'm not sick, why am I coughing so much? And this is just another way for the body to try to get that acid off of those delicate tissues. So a person will cough a lot, maybe they'll feel like, oh, I just have like a lump in my throat, I feel like something's there all the time, or they're doing that throat clearing thing like 7,428 times every single day. And these are all just ways that the body's just trying to get that acid off of there so it's not damaging those tissues so much. And with a lot of people dealing with LPR, they'll say that they experience little to no heartburn. So usually when reflux is coming back up, someone's going to experience that there in their chest, where they're going to feel that burning there in their chest. But with LPR, a lot of times they only feel this discomfort up further. So we want to understand what's going on here. So when we're looking at any type of acid reflux situation, the first thing that we need to consider is this LES, or a lower esophageal sphincter. This little thing that happens right here at the bottom of the esophagus that connects to the stomach, and it opens so food can come in, and then that valve is made to close so that acid doesn't come back up and burn us. The problem is that valve is triggered by stomach acid. So if your client is only making a small amount of stomach acid, but it's not enough to trigger that LES valve to close, then the small amount of acid is going to come back up and burn them and create a whole lot of trouble. So with a lot of people, improving acid reflux issue is about increasing stomach acid. It's about making more acid so there's enough to trigger this valve to close. It's not from somebody having too much stomach acid like advertisers want us to believe in most cases. So that's where we really got to start when we're looking at, okay, is the person's stomach even acidic enough to trigger that valve to close, or is that where we need to kind of take our first steps? But when we're looking at why wouldn't a person be experiencing that heartburn there, why is it trouble up there, we want to look at Barrett's-like situations. And I'm not saying that anybody dealing with LPR has Barrett's esophagus. That's not what I'm saying. But let's look at this overview here on Barrett's. And they say that Barrett's esophagus is a condition in which the flat pink lining of the swallowing tube that connects the mouth to the stomach, the esophagus, becomes damaged by acid reflux, which causes the lining to thicken and become red. And they go on to say that curiously, approximately half of the people diagnosed with Barrett's esophagus report little, if any, symptoms of acid reflux. So the way that a lot of people feel about this with this Barrett's esophagus situation is that basically it's the body changing the structure of these cells and tissues here in the esophagus so that they can withstand that acid that continues to come up where it really shouldn't be. Because a lot of people with LPR, when we're looking at this LES valve, they're going to say, oh, well, it's really my upper esophageal sphincter. Up here, there's another valve, and that one's not closing because I'm having trouble up there. But I don't view it that way at all, because this esophagus is not meant to hold the acid. So I don't view it like, well, this acid is supposed to be here, but there's supposed to be another esophagus up here, keeping it from coming up into those delicate tissues. This acid shouldn't be there. So I don't view it like this is malfunctioning. The problem is usually with this valve down at the bottom. And it's usually because there's not enough acid to trigger that. We'll talk about some other possibilities too in a second. But when this acid is coming back up, well, now the body has to do something, or this acid is going to burn a hole through the esophagus. Remember that this stomach acid is made to help us break down proteins. Well, that's what your esophagus is made of. It's made of proteins. So the body has to do something to protect this. And a lot of people feel like the body is changing the structure, like this Barrett's esophagus was saying, to make those tissues harder. And they turn red from the inflammation that's going on. But by making these tissues harder, now you're not going to digest a hole through that tissue. So that protects that tissue a little bit, but that would make sense why the person would not feel heartburn there, because the tissues have changed and have become less sensitive to that acid. And again, I don't feel like everybody that has LPR must have Barrett's. It could just be they're not feeling that because those tissues have started to change their structure, but they're not changed so much that it's a Barrett's situation. So that's a possibility. But we still need to think about, well, why is the reflux happening way up here? Why is that acid coming way up there? That's a long way to travel. And for that, we need to look at some type of overgrowth situation of bacteria or yeast, mold, fungal, some type of varmint, either in the stomach or the small intestine where they shouldn't be. We shouldn't have a lot of bacteria in the stomach or the small intestine. It should mostly exist in our large intestine. So when there's some type of overgrowth there, like H. pylori is a very common overgrowth to see here in the stomach, or somebody's dealing with a SIBO issue or small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. In either of those scenarios, those bacteria, when there's an overgrowth and there's a lot of them there, they put off these gases. And these gases create pressure that either causes a person to have a lot of gas, or they have a lot of bloating, or some people that pressure will cause things to be pushed back up. So it's usually about the pressure coming from some type of overgrowth that's pushing things back up. And if we look at this study here on the role of H. pylori and laryngopharyngeal reflux, a systemic review, they say that we determined that the prevalence of H. pylori among patients with LPR was 43.9%. So that's a pretty big number when we're looking at the fact that, oh wow, that many people had this issue when they're dealing with LPR. And when we go further, we look at this study on small intestinal bacterial overgrowth and associated with LPR symptoms, severity, and impaired esophageal mucosal integrity, meaning that the integrity of that lining of the esophagus was being damaged. They found that there was a strong correlation between people that were dealing with LPR and this SIBO issue. So that helps us understand that when we're looking at, well, a lot of the people showed that there was an H. pylori overgrowth when they were dealing with LPR. The other studies showed that a lot of people were dealing with a SIBO issue. So that's a large percentage of people that could be dealing with some type of overgrowth with LPR. And with me, I had both. I had an H. pylori issue and I had a SIBO issue, which is really common when there's an overgrowth anywhere, that they're going to spread to other areas because the terrain has kind of been set up to allow these bad guys to come in and thrive. And incidentally, in most cases, when someone has some type of overgrowth, it's due to a lack of stomach acid. That stomach acid is not just there to help us digest our food, it's the barrier to the whole digestive tract. So when a client is not making enough stomach acid, not only can they have reflux because they're not triggering this valve to close, the front door is open and they're letting all these bad guys come in, so it's very common to see an overgrowth issue. Another thing to think about is that a lot of the waste byproduct that these types of bacteria and bad guys put out can be alkaline. So the person might be making enough stomach acid, but if they have an overgrowth there that got in and kind of set up camp at some point, then a lot of that alkaline waste could be neutralizing the acid that the person is making. I see this a lot with clients where we'll start to supplement with betaine HCl capsules to acidify this stomach correctly so we can trigger this valve to close. But we see that that acidification process is not effective because the significant overgrowth is alkalizing all those acids. Some of the clients will experience a magnification of reflux once they get up to a higher dose of HCl, but not on a lower dose. So they're like, oh, I have too much acid, that's causing my reflux. But the reality is that this overgrowth is neutralizing all those acids until they get to a higher dose, and then the higher dose is still not enough to trigger that valve to close. So now the small amount of acid that's still there is coming back up and burning them more. So with clients, we like to see people kind of wipe out that bacteria and take steps to reduce that overgrowth before they take steps to acidify the stomach and trigger this valve to close correctly. Another thing to think about with this LPR is you'll hear about people talking about autonomic malfunctions. And the autonomic nervous system is this system in the body that kind of runs a lot of the show behind the curtains. It kind of has our sympathetic side, which is our fight or flight side, and our parasympathetic side. And this study here on the dysfunction of the autonomic nervous system in gastroesophageal reflux disease kind of found that a lot of people that were dealing with reflux were either way over in that sympathetic state or way into that parasympathetic state. And a thing to think about is that if a client is really stuck in this sympathetic fight or flight state, which can happen for a wide variety of reasons, maybe there's stress in their life, or it could just be stress in their body of some overgrowth or malfunction going on that's creating stress in the body, and it'll shove the body into that fight or flight state. But in that state, it makes it very difficult for the body to make hydrochloric acid. So a lot of people that are dealing with what we call a sympathetic imbalance, where they're stuck in that fight or flight state, can't make enough stomach acid, then maybe they can just make a little bit that's going to create that reflux issue. Another reason that a person might be really stuck in this parasympathetic state is a lot of times if the body doesn't have digestion working the way that it wants to, it will push the body as far into that parasympathetic rest and digest state that it can in an effort to try to boost digestion any way that it can. And if we can help that person fix those digestive malfunctions, it seems to have the ability to correct that parasympathetic imbalance in a lot of cases. So what we want to look at with clients like that is if they're stressed or if the body's stressed, we need to find ways to correct that so the body has the ability to make that hydrochloric acid. But when we're looking at steps to help these clients with this LPR, the first one is always correcting digestive malfunctions. Whether it's a low stomach acid issue, or maybe bile has become too thick and sticky to flow correctly, so bile is not coming down to help us digest our food the way that it should, or those malfunctions have allowed some type of overgrowth to come in, that can be a big problem. So if you don't know how to help clients fix digestive issues, my book, Health Pro Results, chapters 3 and 4, kind of walk you through helping clients figure out which aspects of digestion are going wrong and what steps you can help them take to improve those situations. And the book is available on Amazon, but I'll put a link in the description below where you can get the whole thing totally for free, and then you can just jump to chapters 3 and 4. And if you're a consumer that just happened upon this video because you like the topic, then we'll put a link in the description below for my book, Kick Your Fat in the Nuts, where you can get that for free. And chapters 3 and 4 go over those similar topics. It's just written for consumers, where this Health Pro Results book is really written for health professionals. So I'll put a link to get either of those for free in the description below, and that'll walk you through that process. Some other thing that we need to think about with this LPR is that some people will have a hiatal hernia, where their stomach is kind of pulled up in through the diaphragm a little bit, and now this LES valve is a little bit jacked up and it's not going to close correctly, so the acid is going to come back up. So I'll put a link in the description below for our video over on our consumer channel for how to fix a hiatal hernia, so clients might need to figure out if that might be a problem for them as well. And then fix any of those autonomic nervous system imbalances that might be going on, so the body can eventually start to make more of its own HCl and allow that digestive process to work correctly. So you can see that's a lot of stuff. I don't have steps to give to your clients. I can't just say, have your client just do this, because the underlying cause that's creating the problem is really going to vary from client to client. This thing where health professionals are just giving their clients remedies is a mistake. Most health issues have the ability to have 3 or 4 or 5 different underlying causes, so how is one remedy for a symptom going to work for all your clients? It's just not going to. We have to learn how to look at the client, look at the malfunctions their body is dealing with, look at imbalances that are creating trouble, and help the client fix those underlying causes. But since this overgrowth is such commonly a problem and all that gas and pressure is really pushing things way back up, if you want to understand helping clients correct that issue, you can jump over right now and check out our video on helping clients wipe out bad bacteria in the stomach. I can't wait to hear about your results.